From the 70th floor, the city looked small. Claire Whitmore stood at the glass wall, Chicago flattened beneath her in gray and steel. The river cut a dark line through the grid. Cars moved along Michigan Avenue in thin streams of red and white. Behind her, a chair scraped. She turned. The man across the table wore the black slacks and white shirt of Harbor and Hearth, the flagship restaurant of Whitmore hospitality. Early 30s, dark hair, decent posture, a faint shadow under his eyes. "Mr. Cole," she said, "thank you for coming up." "Yes, ma'am." His voice was steady. He sat with his hands on his knees. No nervous laugh, no glance at the view. Claire picked up the folder on the table. His name sat on the tab in neat block letters, Cole Daniel. 2 years on staff, no complaints, frequent requests for early shifts. His file was thinner than most. "This is about your position at Harbor and Hearth," she said. "Of course." The second hand on the wall clock ticked. Claire let the silence stretch, watching for panic, anger, anything. "We are letting you go," she said, effective immediately. Something moved in his eyes, a small shuddering like a door eased almost closed. His fingers pressed into his pants and left a crease. He blinked once. He did not ask why. He drew a slow breath and met her gaze. "Thank you," he said, "for the chance to work here." The words were plain, no flattery, no edge. "There is one thing," he added. "Yes. If this is final," he said, "please do not let my daughter hear it from anyone here. Let her think I am still trying. She is 6. She does not need to know I failed." For a moment, the room narrowed to that request. The clock in the vents dropped away. She should have stayed silent. That was the point of the exercise. Instead, she said, "Mr. Cole, this is part of an internal evaluation. You are not actually being terminated." He stared at her, testing the words. Confusion flickered, then hardened into something quieter. "An evaluation," he repeated. "A stress scenario," she replied, "to see how employees react under pressure." Daniel nodded once. He rose without waiting to be dismissed. "Then I hope the numbers are worth it," he said, because that felt real. There was no heat in his tone. That absence stung more than anger. He opened the door and stepped out. The latch clicked behind him. Claire stood alone with the thin folder and the city under glass. The clock kept ticking. The morning in Daniel Cole's real life had started long before the 70th floor. At 5:30, the alarm on his scratched phone buzzed against the coffee table. He rolled off the couch, slapped it quiet, and listened. From behind the bedroom door came the steady breathing of a child. He crossed the small living room to the kitchen corner and filled a kettle, setting it on the stove. Coffee grounds into the machine. 2 eggs into a bowl whisked with a fork. The bedroom door scraped open. Lily padded out in a t-shirt that almost reached her ankles, hair wild on one side, dragging a stuffed rabbit by one ear. "Morning, Daddy," she mumbled. "Morning, Bug." He lifted her onto a chair at the small table. Her toes swung above the floor. "Scrambled?" he asked. She nodded. "And toast. The good kind." "There is no other kind." Bread into the toaster, butter into the pan. Eggs hit the heat and turned soft and yellow. The kettle hissed. He poured orange juice into a glass, coffee into a chipped mug. On the refrigerator, a sheet of paper was pinned by a magnet shaped like a smiling sun. Crayon lines showed a bar counter bottles and a stick figure behind it with messy brown hair. Underneath, in careful letters, it said, "Daddy at work." He let his eyes rest on it for half a second, then turned back to the stove. They ate facing the single window. Outside, the sky was a thin, cold blue. Lily talked between bites about a spelling test and a girl with a glittery backpack. He listened, nodding when she needed him to. When the plates were empty, he rinsed them and checked the time. They were on schedule. In the bedroom, Lily's backpack waited by the wall. He helped her into jeans and a sweater, pulled a knit hat over her hair while she wiggled. "Too tight," she said. "That is how you know it is working," he answered. She grabbed her backpack and the rabbit. "Ready." Daniel shrugged into his worn parka and wrapped a frayed scarf around her neck. At the door, she slipped her hand into his small and warm. Outside, the wind off the lake cut through his sleeves. They walked to the bus stop on the corner. "Will you be home before dark?" she asked. "I will try," he said. The bus pulled up. He lifted her on and paid the fare. A few stops later, he walked her through the school gates where the sun was a weak circle above the rooftops. He knelt to zip her coat and tug her hat low. "You got this," he said. "I know." She hugged him quick and ran for the doors, rabbit ears flapping from her backpack. When she disappeared inside, he turned toward the train station and the towers of glass waiting on the northern edge of the skyline. By the time Daniel descended into the subway, Claire was stepping out of her penthouse shower, steam curling against floor-to-ceiling windows. 70th floor, different building, same view of the lake. Her apartment was white and quiet. White sofa, white marble island, white shelves with a few careful objects. No photos in frames, no toys underfoot. The city spread out on three sides, distant and muffled. She wrapped a towel around her hair and crossed to the kitchen. The coffee machine blinked at her when she passed. She tapped the button and listened to the grind of beans, the low whir that filled the silence for a moment. On the counter, her phone buzzed. One new voicemail, the name on the screen, Dad. She let it play on speaker while she pulled a blazer from the closet in the hallway. "Morning, Claire," Thomas Whitmore's voice said. Smooth, measured. "Saw the quarterly numbers. Good but not excellent. Do not get comfortable up there. Complacency is how people fall." She reached for a white blouse. The hangers slid along the rail with small clicks. "Remember what I taught you," the voicemail continued. "Pressure reveals cracks. Anyone can shine when it is easy. Call me when you have something ambitious to report." The message ended with a thin electronic beep. The apartment went quiet again. Claire buttoned her blouse and checked herself in the mirror by the door. Light makeup, hair pulled back, no stray lines, no softness. In the elevator, she watched the numbers count down from 70 to 60 in a smooth red progression. At 50, the doors opened for a pair of junior lawyers from some other firm. They stepped in, lowered their voices when they recognized her pressed against the opposite wall, as if her presence were a heat source. She nodded once. The door slid shut and carried them down. On 45, she exited and crossed the private lobby to a second bank of elevators. These ones went up. Whitmore Tower, proper, began at 50. The hospitality group occupied the top 20 floors, glass and steel and polished wood. Her office sat at the very top. Her assistant was already at her desk, hands on a keyboard, a half-eaten bagel beside her laptop. "Morning, Jess," Claire said. "Morning," Jess replied. "You have the performance review schedule on your desk. HR wants to finalize by next week." "HR can wait," Claire said. She walked into her office and set her bag down. The room was mostly glass with a strip of wall for a credenza and a long table. The city lay beneath the windows, the river a dark ribbon far below. On the desk, a neat stack of folders waited, each one a person. Each person a cluster of numbers and comments. She sat, flipped one open, scanned the neat bullet points. Efficient, consistent, room for improvement. It read like every file she had ever seen. Her father's last visit found her then, as clearly as if he had just walked into the room. She had been 27, newly named CEO, still learning where everything was. He had stood by that same window, hands behind his back, looking out at the river. "These people," he had said, not turning, "are your greatest asset and your biggest risk." She had stood beside him, watching his reflection in the glass. "If you rely on HR reports," he said, "you will see the mask. Nobody shows you who they are when they know you are deciding their paycheck. You want to see their core, you take away whatever they think they cannot live without." She remembered the way his profile had sharpened when he finally looked at her. "That month when you were 16, he said. "No cards, no money, no help. Do you regret it?" She had thought of cheap hostels that smelled of bleach and laundry, of counting tips in a back alley, behind a diner, of watching other girls her age swipe gold cards in boutiques while she folded jeans at closing. "No," she had said. He had nodded, satisfied. "It made you," he said. "Pain is a filter. Use it." The memory receded. The city sharpened. Claire closed the folder in front of her. Then she pushed the whole stack away. She reached for her phone. "Jess," she said when her assistant picked up, "tell HR I will handle evaluations personally this year. I want 30-minute blocks scheduled with key staff. Different departments, mix of levels, start with Harbor and Hearth." There was a small pause on the line. "All right," Jess said. "They may have questions. They can send them to me." She hung up and opened a drawer. Inside lay a remote control, small and black. She pressed a button and a bank of screens along the side wall blinked on. Camera feeds appeared tiled across the glass. Lobbies, kitchens, hallways. The main dining room at Harbor and Hearth came up in the center, empty at that hour, except for cleaning staff setting tables. She watched a busser polish wine glasses, his movements slow, bored. A line cook leaned against a counter, scrolling on his phone when he thought no one was looking. The system showed her everything, almost everything. By mid-morning, the first evaluation subject sat across from her, eyes shifting between Claire and the view. He was a front desk manager from a mid-level hotel near the airport, mid-30s, married, 2 kids. "Thank you for coming," she said. He swallowed. "Of course." She kept the folder closed in front of her. Names and numbers were a backdrop. What she wanted was the moment. This is about your role with Whitmore Hospitality, she said. He nodded, throat-working. We are eliminating your position, she said. Effective today. The words sat between them clean and simple. His face went blank, then red. His eyes darted to the window, then to her. His hands curled on his knees. You cannot do that, he said. I mean, you can, but I have no write-ups, no warnings. There has to be some kind of mistake. There is no mistake. My wife just had our second baby, he said. I can work more. Extra weekends, nights, whatever you need. She watched each pleading note like she was listening to an unfamiliar song. Thank you, she said at last. This has been an evaluation of your crisis response. Your employment is not being terminated. He stared, processing. Relief washed over his features, messy and raw. So I am not fired, he said. No. He laughed once, a short burst, half anger, half hysterical. That is one way to do a review, he said. When he left, shoulder sagging from the emotional whiplash, she made a few quick notes in his file. Under pressure, he begged, tied value to job, fear-based. The next one cried as soon as she heard the word eliminated. A young housekeeper from a downtown hotel, sole support for her younger siblings. Tears fell without sound. Her hands shook. She did not ask for anything. She just nodded as if she deserved it. You are not actually being let go, Claire told her in the same even tone. This is a stress evaluation. The girl wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and whispered, Thank you, as if she had been given a gift. Another subject, a bartender, took the news with a flat stare and a bitter laugh. Figures, he said. This place never cared anyway. He left before she could reveal the test. Security had to bring him back so she could tell him he was still employed. By the end of the second day, she had watched 12 variations on the same theme. Panic, bargaining, resentment, silence. Each reaction fit somewhere on the grid that lived in her mind, a pattern shaped by her father. Take away what matters, and people showed their fault lines. Jess stuck her head in the door late that afternoon. Last one for today is from Harbor and Hearth, she said. Server, sometimes bartender, Daniel Cole. Claire looked up from her notes. Send him in, she said. The elevator that brought Daniel up to the executive floors felt different from the ones he took every day. The walls were brushed metal instead of scratched plastic. The lights ran in a clean line along the ceiling. There was no faint sour smell of spilled coffee, only a trace of something chemical and sharp that reminded him of new shoes. He watched the numbers climb, 58, 62, 68. His reflection in the doors looked blurred, a man in a white shirt and black slacks, tie a little too tight, hair a little too flat. The faint bruise-colored shadows under his eyes did not go away no matter how many hours he slept. Not that he slept many. When the doors opened, the carpet outside was thick enough that his shoes did not make a sound. The reception desk on the 70th floor was a curve of pale wood. A plant with glossy leaves sat in one corner. Behind the desk, the assistant from his last trip up here a year ago at a staff awards ceremony looked up. Mr. Cole, she said, you can go right in. He cleared his throat. Thank you. His hand was damp on the handle of Claire Whitmore's office door. He wiped it on his pants before he turned the knob. The room beyond was all glass and air. The city stretched on every side, cut by the dark line of the river. The lake glimmered pale at the edge of the world. Claire stood with her back to him, a slim figure in a dark suit, her hands lightly touching the window frame. She turned when the door clicked. Up close, she was narrower than she looked, in photographs less polished than the magazine covers made her seem. Not softer, just more real. A faint line between her brows gave her face a constant thinking look. Mr. Cole, she said, thank you for coming up. He nodded. His throat felt tight, so he did not trust it with words. She gestured to the chair across from the desk. He sat back straight, hands on his knees. His palms wanted to grip the cushions. He kept them flat. On her desk lay a folder with his name on the tab. The sight of it hit like a small blow. He thought of the rent envelope on his kitchen counter, of Lily's lunch account email blinking in his inbox. This is about your position at Harbor and Hearth, she said. He heard the second hand on the wall clock, the buzz of something hidden in the ceiling, the distant siren of a police car far below. He waited for the part where she said he was doing fine, where she mentioned a raise that would not quite match inflation. We are letting you go, she said, effective immediately. The words landed in his chest and stayed there. For a moment, he thought he had not heard correctly. The room stayed bright, the city stayed where it was. The floor did not tilt. He felt his fingers press into the fabric of his pants. He let them. Questions flashed through in a rush. Why? For what? Who would watch Lily in the afternoons if he had to scramble for 2 jobs? How many weeks could he stretch the savings in the coffee can behind the cereal boxes? None of them came out of his mouth. He drew one breath, then another, and made sure his voice worked before he used it. "Thank you," he said, "for the chance to work here." Her eyes flickered just enough that he saw it. She had expected something else. It would be easy to beg, to list the double shifts, the weekends, the way he closed down the bar when the others had already vanished, the fever nights with Lily when he still showed up for the breakfast crowd, the moments where his body wanted to fold and did not. He could have said any of that. Instead, another thought pushed ahead. "There is one favor I want to ask," he said. She waited. "If this is final," he said, and hated that his voice roughened on the word, "please do not let my daughter hear it from anyone here. Let her think I am still trying. She is 6. She does not need to carry this." The room felt very quiet after he finished. He could hear the hum inside the walls again. He tried not to see Lily's crayon drawing on the refrigerator door. Something in Claire's face changed. It was not a big thing. The line between her brows deepened for half a second, then smoothed. "Mr. Cole," she said, "this is part of an internal evaluation. You are not actually being terminated." He stared at her. The words made sense. Together they did not. "An evaluation," he said. "A controlled high-pressure scenario," she replied, "to observe how employees respond under stress." He sat back slowly. The air in his lungs felt heavy. "So this is a test," he said. "Yes. You were never actually letting me go." "No," she said. Relief did not come. Something else did, something cooler and more precise. "This is how you test people," he said, "by making them think their life just fell apart." She did not look away. Pressure reveals character. He stood. His legs were steady. "Then I hope the data helps," he said, "because it felt real enough." He did not raise his voice. That seemed important for reasons he did not examine. He nodded once and walked to the door. He did not know if she expected him to wait for some formal dismissal. He had nothing left to ask. In the hallway, the carpet swallowed the sound of his footsteps. The assistant glanced up, searching his face for a clue. He kept it calm. "That is all?" she asked. "That is all?" he said. In the elevator down, he watched his fist close around nothing. He made himself uncurl his fingers. He had not begged. He had not raged. That would have to be enough for now. When he reached the staff locker room in the basement levels, the fluorescent lights hummed against concrete walls. The air smelled of detergent and fryer oil. Marcus was tying his shoes on the bench. "Hey," the cook said, "how is the Queen's Tower?" Daniel opened his locker, reached for his apron. "Still standing," he said. "You look like someone just read you a tax code," Marcus said. "Everything okay?" "I still have a job," Daniel answered. It was technically true. "Then it is a good day," Marcus said. Daniel closed his locker, the thin metal door ringing soft. He did not argue. Upstairs, 70 floors above the smell of fryer oil, Claire remained seated for a long time after he left. The room had not changed. The city still glittered in the cold morning light. The folders still lay on her desk in a neat stack. Inside her chest, something did not sit the way it had an hour ago. She replayed his last words without meaning to. "Let her think I'm still trying. She is 6. She does not need to carry this." He had thanked her. Then his only request had been about a child she had never met. She reached for his file and opened it. Name Daniel Cole, position server Harbor and Hearth, occasional bar duty. She scanned the type, date of hire, previous experience in smaller restaurants and bars, a note in HR script about a spouse deceased 2 years earlier, single parent, multiple schedule change requests to accommodate school pickups and drop-offs, no disciplinary actions, no written complaints from guests or supervisors. Near the bottom, someone had added in different handwriting, reliable, quiet, not leadership material. Her eyes went back to the line about the spouse. Deceased. Her father would have said that detail was irrelevant. Personal life did not belong in the columns that mattered. She closed the folder, then opened it again. The black remote sat where she had left it. She picked it up and pointed it toward the bank of screens. The tiles lit up. Hallways, lobbies, kitchens. She found Harbor and Hearth's feed and enlarged it. The image showed the main floor and the slow run up to lunch. Staff in black and white moving between tables. A hostess placing menus. A bartender restocking the back shelf. She adjusted the angle with a touch of a button. A closer view of the bar came into focus. Daniel stepped into the frame, tying on his apron as he walked. He checked the glassware. He straightened a row of bottles more by habit than necessity. Nothing dramatic, no crisis. Yet something about the way he moved held her attention. Efficient, precise, no wasted motion. When another server waved him over, he listened, then took a tray that was not his and delivered it without complaint. On the monitor, his face was calm, not blank, not forced, just focused. She watched him laugh at something a regular at the bar said. It was not a big laugh. The line at the corner of his mouth softened. From this height, the sound did not reach her. Her father's voice came back again, spliced over the silent footage. Pressure reveals cracks. She thought of the way Daniel's voice had thickened, only when he said the word, daughter. Of how quickly he had turned his attention from himself to a 6-year-old who would never know her father had been fired for 10 minutes. She lowered the remote and let it rest against her knee. In the glass in front of her, Chicago shimmered. The lake shone pale at the horizon. Her own reflection stared back small against the city and the sky. The next few days, Claire told herself she was simply following up. A responsible leader checked on the people she had evaluated. That was all. Still, each morning after she logged in, after she glanced at the overnight numbers and the stock chart and the latest email from Thomas full of percentages and warnings, her hand found the remote. The screens woke in a soft glow, lobbies, loading docks, corridors. Her thumb hovered, then guided the cursor to Harbor and Hearth. On the main feed, the dining room appeared empty, except for a couple of servers polishing cutlery. The light in the restaurant was different from her office. Warmer, yellower. It gave the wood tables a kind of quiet shine. She watched for a moment, then caught herself and set the remote down. There was actual work to do, budget projections, vendor negotiations. Her email filled with questionings from HR about the new evaluation protocol. She answered them in short, direct lines, careful not to mention the part where she had broken her own rules in the very first test. By mid-morning, the curiosity tugged again. When she brought Harbor and Hearth back up, the room had changed. Staff were moving faster. The prep rush before lunch. Daniel was at the bar, sleeves rolled, hands moving in a rhythm that belonged more to craft than to routine. Shake, pour, wipe, set. He refilled garnishes without looking, reached for a clean glass without having to search. A hostess came by, said something with an apologetic tilt of her head. Daniel nodded, took a stack of menus from her, crossed the floor, and helped seat a party that was not technically his job to seat. On paper, he was not leadership material. Her eyes drifted to the folder on the corner of her desk. The comment stared back at her. She opened a separate window and pulled up the internal performance system. The last manager review for Daniel flashed on screen. Good with guests, reliable, prefers early shifts, has requested schedule changes several times to pick up child. Attached was a scanned document. She clicked it open. Incident report. Server left 30 minutes before posted end of shift. Reason child pickup. Manager D. Park. Action taken, verbal warning. She stared at the lines until they blurred. Her father would have said rules were rules. Schedules were commitments. You did not bend structure for personal lives. Her finger rested on the mouse unmoving. A different thought surfaced, less practiced. For a man whose entire life turned around a 6-year-old 30 minutes was not a lack of commitment. It was commitment in its purest shape. She closed the report and picked up the phone. Jess, she said when her assistant answered, get me Diane Park from Harbor and Hearth. A minute later, the line clicked, and another voice came on, slightly breathless and edged with kitchen noise. Yes, Ms. Whitmore, this is Diane. Diane, Claire said, I am reviewing employee files. I have a question about an incident report on Daniel Cole, a warning for leaving his shift early. There was a pause. Claire could hear the muted clatter of plates in the background, someone calling for more ice. Yes, Diane said. That was a while ago. We fixed the schedule afterward. Fixed it how? We adjusted his shifts so he has a hard stop for pickup, Diane said. He comes in earlier, covers prep, that kind of thing. Has his performance suffered? No, Diane said with no hesitation. If anything, he does more while he is here. I only filed that report because it was policy. He and I talked after. He did not blame me. Claire looked at the scanned form again. The neat block letters, the small stain in one corner, where someone's thumb had smudged the ink. Thank you, she said. She hung up and opened a new email. The subject line wrote itself. Revised scheduling policy. She wrote slowly at first, then faster. Effective immediately, employees with primary responsibility for children under 12 are eligible for flexible scheduling accommodations. Coverage must be maintained, but managers are authorized to structure shifts to support family obligations where possible. She reread it, trimmed 2 words, and hit send to HR with a copy to all unit heads. It was not a revolution. The world outside her windows did not change color. In the restaurant feed, the lunch rush hit. Daniel moved between bar and service area, shoulder set, attention divided and precise. A guest snapped fingers in his direction. He turned, smiled, covered the small rudeness with smooth courtesy. The guest relaxed, never knowing he had been close to crossing a line. Claire watched the way Daniel's hand settled briefly on the bar counter after the interaction, grounding himself. A tiny pause, then he moved on. Late that afternoon, she found Harbor and Hearth again. The dining room had emptied out between services. Staff lingered in the back, the hum of the exhaust fan steady over the muffled sound of voices. One of the cameras in the employee lounge had audio. She had insisted on that years ago after an incident with harassment claims. Information mattered. She clicked that feed. The image showed a cramped room with a sagging couch and a long table. A vending machine glowed in the corner. Daniel sat at the table, a plastic water bottle in front of him. Marcus, the cook, lounged opposite, legs stretched out, shoes unlaced. "What you are doing tonight?" Marcus asked. "Homework supervision," Daniel said. "Bath time. Negotiations with a 6-year-old who thinks broccoli is an insult." Marcus laughed. "Man, you have been single since I met you. You ever going to let someone buy you a drink?" Daniel turned the bottle in his hands. "People ask why I do not date," he said. It struck Claire that his voice sounded different here than in the main room. Softer, less tuned for strangers. "I tell them the truth," he continued. "I have not met anyone I trust with Lily." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You are allowed to have your own life." "My life is her," Daniel said, almost shrugging. "Also, Emily still feels close. I am not ready to let someone step into that space and pretend it is simple." The room quieted for a heartbeat. Even through the speakers, Claire felt the small vacuum. "She would not want you alone forever," Marcus said. "Probably not," Daniel answered. "But she is not here to say so. I am. So, I make the calls I can live with." He took a sip of water and changed the subject, asking Marcus about a new menu item. The moment closed without ceremony. Claire had been married once on paper. It had lasted 11 months. Her ex-husband had liked her title more than her. He had liked the penthouse, the invitations, the deference that followed her into rooms. When he realized that the power was hers and not his to wield, when he realized her hours would never bend around his whims, he had lost interest. They separated quietly, no scandal, no tabloid spread, just a lawyer and signatures and a statement about different paths. She had not loved him. That was the one grace of the whole arrangement. She wondered what it would be like to have someone speak of her the way Daniel spoke of Emily, as if the shape of her absence could still fill a room. A sharp annoyance rose at herself for even letting the thought form. This was not about that. She was a CEO monitoring workforce dynamics. That was all. She clicked the lounge feed off and forced herself back to contracts, to vendor bids, to spreadsheets. The numbers blurred faster than usual. That evening, as the sky went from gray to orange to deep blue out on her windows, she stood and walked to the glass. From this height, the streetlights came on in a slow wave, block by block. The river caught scattered reflections and held them. Far below Harbor and Hearth glowed on the corner of its block a small bright rectangle. She knew she would find Daniel there if she checked. The pattern of his schedule lived in the back of her mind, now an uninvited guest. Early prep, afternoon service. Some evenings when Mrs. Jenkins watched Lily. No nights when she could not. She touched the glass with her fingertips. It was colder than she expected. Her father would have seen only cost and output hours and margins. He would have said family stories were noise on the surface of a balance sheet. Her hand stayed on the glass a moment longer, then dropped. The next morning, an HR director appeared at her door holding a printed copy of her scheduling email. "Ms. Whitmore," he said about this new policy. "Operations is worried about coverage." "Coverage is a management problem," she said. "People with children should not have to choose between feeding them and seeing them after school." He frowned faintly, as if trying to reconcile this with the woman he thought he knew. "Of course," he said. "We just need guidelines." "You have them," she replied. "Trust your unit heads. If they abuse the flexibility, we will address it. If they use it well, we keep it." He nodded, still looking as if he wanted to ask what had prompted the change. He did not. When he left, she saw the email he had printed was already scrawled with notes in someone else's handwriting. Words like risk and precedent circled in pen. She pushed the paper aside. On the screens, Harbor and Hearth came into view again. Daniel stepped through the door 18 minutes before his shift officially began. He held a cardboard tray in one hand. He set it on the bar and passed out coffees to 2 bleary-eyed bussers, a hostess and Marcus. They laughed at something he said. One of them clapped him on the shoulder. He kept a cup for himself, took a sip, and for a moment his shoulders eased. Claire did not know if he could feel it, but the shape of the company he worked for had shifted however slightly around the space he occupied. The call came late on a Thursday afternoon, when the sky had gone flat and colorless above the city, and Claire was deep inside a vendor contract. She was in a small conference room on the 68th floor with a spreadsheet open on a screen when her phone buzzed. Jess's name appeared. "Yes," Claire answered. "Diane Park is here to see you," Jess said. "She says it is important. She looks a little rattled." "Send her in." A moment later, Diane stepped into the room, still in her black manager suit, hair frizzed slightly from the steam of the kitchen. A grease stain marked her sleeve. She looked like she had come up too fast, like the air had not caught up with her yet. "Ms. Whitmore," she said. "Sorry to interrupt." Claire closed the laptop with one hand. "What is it?" "It is about Daniel Cole," Diane said. The words tightened something in Claire's stomach before she could name it. "Is there a problem with his performance?" she asked. "No," Diane said quickly. "Nothing like that. His neighbor, the one who watches his daughter in the evenings, had a fall this afternoon. Mrs. Jenkins broke her wrist. He called me from the ambulance." Claire pictured the typed line in his file. "Childcare support from neighbor and landlord. No local family." "Is she all right?" Claire asked. "They took her to the hospital," Diane said. "She is stable, but she is out for a while. Daniel says he has no one else to watch Lily tonight. He asked if there is any way he can bring her in for one evening. Keep her in the back." He sounded desperate. The word hung between them. Desperate. "You know the rules about non-staff in the kitchen areas," Diane added. "Insurance, safety, all of that. I told him I had to ask you." Claire looked past Diane to the window. From here she could see the roof of Harbor and Hearth, 2 blocks away, a small shape among many. "How late is he scheduled?" she asked. "Close," Diane said. "We are short on bartenders this week. Someone called out." "Can you cover his bar shift?" "I can help," Diane said. "But if I pull someone else, we will feel it on the floor." Claire's father would have said that personal crises did not excuse lapses in service. Guests did not care why a drink arrived late. They only noticed that it did. Guests also did not care who prepared their drink, as long as it tasted right. "Let him bring his daughter," Claire said. "Keep her somewhere safe and out of the way. Give him a corner and 30 minutes to feed her. After that, he works his shift, you manage the rest." Diane blinked. "Are you sure?" she asked. "You can note that the exception was authorized," Claire said. "If anyone has a problem with it, they can bring it to me." Relief eased Diane's shoulders. "Thank you," she said. "He will not forget it." Claire thought of the way he had looked at her when she told him about the test. He had not called her kind then. "This is not a favor," she said. "It is logistics." Diane nodded, but a small, knowing curl touched the corner of her mouth. She bowed her head slightly and left. When the door closed, the contract on the screen felt thinner. Claire stared at the rows of numbers, then let out a slow breath and stood. She walked back to her office, picked up the remote without letting herself think about it, and brought Harbor and Hearth onto the largest screen. The dining room cameras showed the shift change, day staff clocking out, evening crew drifting in. The light inside had shifted to a deeper gold. Outside, traffic lights blinked red and green. She flipped to the kitchen feed. Steam rose from steel pans. Line cooks chopped and seared. The narrow corridor by the dish machine was a blur of motion. Near the back wall, on an upturned plastic crate, a small figure sat with her legs tucked under her. Lily. Her sneakers almost touched the floor, but not quite. She wore jeans and a pink sweatshirt with a faded cartoon fox on the front. Her hair was pulled into a rough ponytail that had surrendered a strand or two to freedom. A paper placemat rested on her knees, covered in half-finished marker flowers. She held a crayon carefully tongue-caught between her teeth and filled in a petal with intense focus. Drivers coming into the alley might see nothing but a flash of color. The kitchen staff moved around her like she was a stone in a stream. Marcus passed by and ruffled her hair. She smiled without looking up. Claire felt her hand tighten on the remote. Lily looked smaller than Claire had imagined. The word daughter in Daniel's mouth had conjured something almost abstract. Here she was human and fragile in the hard metal light of the prep area. The door to the kitchen swung, and Daniel appeared carrying a plate balanced on his hand. It held chicken tenders and fries arranged with more care than most children's meals ever saw. "All right," he said, his voice just audible over the hum of the fan picked up by the mic in the ceiling. "Dinner delivery." Lily dropped the crayon and set the placemat aside. "Are those the good fries?" she asked. "These are the world-famous Harbor and Hearth fries," he said. Chef Marcus himself signed off. "You made that up," she said, but her grin reached all the way to her eyes. Daniel set the plate on an overturned bucket next to her crate to improvise a table. He knelt down so they were closer to eye level. "Now remember," he said, lowering his voice. You are in the secret grown-up area. That means no exploring, no touching anything, and no going anywhere near the big scary machine that eats plates. She glanced toward the industrial dishwasher, then back at him. I can be invisible, she said. I do not doubt it, he said. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead and pressed his lips to the top of her head with a quick, unpracticed tenderness. On the screen, the gesture lasted less than a second. It landed in Claire's chest like something heavier. He straightened and checked the time on the clock above the door. I have to go back out front, he said. If you want more sauce, you wave at Chef Marcus. He will pretend to be annoyed and then sneak it to you. Got it, she said, already spearing a fry. Stay on your crate, he added. I will. And yell if anyone tries to recruit you for dish duty. She rolled her eyes in a way that echoed a woman he used to love. I am 6, she said. I have rights. He laughed and shook his head, then turned and vanished through the swinging door. Claire did not realize she was leaning forward until her forehead almost touched the glass of the monitor. Someone brushed her doorway. Everything all right? Jess asked. Claire straightened. Fine, she said. Just checking in on site operations. Jess nodded and retreated. The door clicked softly. Claire turned the volume down slightly and watched Lily eat alone in the corner of the busy kitchen. The girl swung her feet a little as she chewed, humming some song under her breath. Every time someone brushed too close, Daniel would reappear for a heartbeat, reshuffling the flow, creating a buffer without making a scene. He refilled her water. He slid a small cup of cut carrots onto her makeshift table. Those are not fries, she said. Superhero fuel, he said. No carrots, no flight. She narrowed her eyes, studying him, then popped one into her mouth with exaggerated reluctance. The entire time he kept an ear turned to the bar. Orders came in. He moved smoothly between his roles between worlds without hesitation. There had been afternoons when Claire had held some investor's hand through a market scare and then walked into a boardroom like nothing had happened. She knew what it was to change faces between one door and the next. Watching Daniel do it while keeping track of a 6-year-old in a kitchen full of hot metal and sharp corners pressed against a nerve she had not known was exposed. She could have turned the feed off. She did not. When her eyes began to sting, she told herself it was from the glow of the monitors. The sky darkened outside. The lake disappeared into blackness. City lights took over. In the screen's corner, Lily shifted, rubbing her arms. She took another fry slower this time. The flush on her cheeks looked a little brighter under the harsh light. Claire stood without quite deciding to, and stepped back from the wall of screens. It was not her responsibility to know whether a restaurant employee's child felt warm or cold. That was the kind of thought her father would have dismissed as dangerous. She crossed the office and opened the small refrigerator under the counter. Inside sat a few bottles of sparkling water, a container of cut fruit, a carton of yogurt that had expired last week. She closed it again. It was late enough that she could have gone home. Drivers and staff would be waiting to take her wherever she wanted. Instead, she sat back down, opened a file, and tried to read. The numbers did not hold. Her gaze kept drifting to the periphery of the screens, to the small figure on the crate, to the blur of Daniel's white shirt moving in and out of frame. By 9 o'clock, the restaurant was in full evening stride. The bar gleamed with glass and polished metal. Laughter and conversation rolled across the floor in a low, uneven tide sound without words on the silent feed. Lily's head drooped once, twice as sleep pressed at her. She straightened each time, stubborn. Her hand brushed her forehead. Claire's stomach tightened. She almost told herself she was imagining it. Pixels could be deceptive. Cameras distorted colors. Her phone rang on the desk. She picked it up at once. Ms. Whitmore, Jess said. Diane is on the line. She says it is urgent. Should I put her through? Yes. There was a small click. Then the noise of a busy room flooded the speaker, muffled and chaotic. Ms. Whitmore, Diane's voice came through. I am sorry to bother you again. It is Lily. She is not feeling well. Daniel is with her in the back. He is trying to call a cab, but none of the cars are taking new fares. The weather and the game traffic. I thought you should know, in case he needs to leave early. Claire glanced at the window. Far below, the streets were slick with recent rain. Headlights smeared into long lines. On the screen, she saw Daniel in the kitchen kneeling in front of his daughter. Lily leaned against him, her face pale under the leftover flush eyes, glassy. He touched her forehead, then looked toward the exit with a tight, calculating expression. I will be right there, Claire said. She ended the call, grabbed her coat from the back of her chair, and walked out of the office without her bag. The elevator dropped so fast, Claire felt the tug in her stomach. She watched the floors blur past. 65, 60, 52. The mirrored doors threw her back at herself. Hair too neat, lipstick too perfect, eyes sharper than she wanted to see. In the lobby, the security guard straightened when he saw her stride across the marble. "Evening, Ms. Whitmore," he said. "Car ready?" she asked. "Garage level 3, same spot," he replied. The air in the underground lot smelled of oil and cold concrete. Lights hummed overhead, bright and harsh. Her black sedan sat where she left it, edges catching the fluorescent glare. She unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. Fingers on the steering wheel, she checked the rear view out of habit, seeing nothing but a slice of empty lane behind her. Harbor and Hearth was only a few blocks away, but the streets were thick with traffic. A game had just let out at the arena. Fans spilled into crosswalks and clusters of color. She eased the car into the flow, inching forward. Red brake lights lit up around her. Horns sounded in short bursts of frustration. On the sidewalk, people laughed, shouted, pulled jackets tighter against the wind. Her phone buzzed on the console. "Jess, do you need anything from us?" Jess asked. "I can call ahead." "I am almost there," Claire said. "Tell Diane I am 5 minutes out." She cut down a side street to avoid a clogged intersection. Puddles flashed under the headlights. The restaurant sign came into view, its letters glowing over the corner entrance. She found a spot in the alley reserved for deliveries, and company vehicles killed the engine and stepped out. The back door to Harbor and Hearth opened into heat and noise. Steam rolled from the dish pit, pans hissed on burners. Voices collided, layered, urgent. Diane met her at the threshold, cheeks flushed. "In here," she said. They threaded through the kitchen. Staff stepped aside when they saw who followed Diane, surprise flickering across faces, then vanishing as quickly as it came. At the far end of the line near the dish machine, Daniel sat on the floor with Lily in his lap. Her head rested against his shoulder, eyes half closed. Her skin was pale under a bright, blotchy flush. Sweat dampened the hair at her temples. The paper placemat lay crumpled on the crate beside them, forgotten. Daniel's hand cupped the back of her neck thumb, moving in slow circles as if that alone could lower the heat in her body. He looked up when Diane stopped. For a moment, his gaze passed right over Claire as if his mind had not caught up with what his eyes saw. Then recognition clicked in. His jaw tightened, not with deference, but with the strained concentration of a man already stretched thin. "She spiked a fever," he said. His voice was rough, as if he had been talking too fast for too long. "She was fine at home. A little warm, I thought, but she was laughing. 10 minutes ago she started shaking. I called a cab, 3 of them. Nobody is taking fares. The game, the rain, I do not know." Lily moaned softly and tried to burrow closer. Claire stepped closer. The heat coming off the child was visible in the way her cheeks glowed. "We are taking her to the hospital," Claire said. "My car is outside." Daniel blinked. "I cannot ask you to do that," he said. "You did not ask," she replied. "I am offering. Come on." She turned as if the matter were settled. Diane moved aside. Daniel hesitated only a moment longer, then shifted Lily carefully in his arms, gathering her as if she were made of glass. Her arms went around his neck, her fingers clenched in his collar. "Tell Marcus to cover the bar," Daniel said over his shoulder. "I already did," Diane answered. "Go." The alley air hit Lily like a new element. She whined a small sound between a cry and a complaint and squeezed her eyes shut. "Almost there, Bug," Daniel murmured. "You are all right. I got you." He climbed into the back seat without being told, settling in so that Lily lay against his chest, her head on his shoulder. He braced his feet, making a nest of his arms and torso around her. Claire slid behind the wheel and started the car. "What hospital?" she asked. "St. Luke's is closest," Daniel said. 3 blocks east, 6 north. "I know it," she said. She pulled out of the alley, nosed the car into traffic. Horns blared. Someone shouted from a sedan when she merged. She ignored them. In the rearview mirror, she saw Daniel looking down at his daughter, his lips close to her ear. His hand moved in a slow rhythm on her back. "You are okay," he whispered. "Tell me if you feel worse. Tell me if your throat hurts. Can you do that for me?" Lily's answer came out fractured. "Tired," she mumbled. "I know," he said. "You can sleep in a minute. Just hold on." The stoplights felt farther apart than usual. Every red seemed longer. Claire tapped the steering wheel while she waited, her jaw clenched. On the sidewalk, a group of college kids in jerseys laughed and knocked shoulders. One of them looked toward the car, eyes skimming over the woman in front, never seeing the man and the child in the back. When they reached the hospital entrance, Claire swung into the drop-off lane and stopped close to the doors. "I will park," she said. "You go in." Daniel did not argue. He opened the door and stepped out, Lily cradled to his chest. As he moved, her hand slipped free and caught at the edge of Claire's coat, fingers brushing the wool. Claire felt the tug like a static ache. It disappeared a second later as he turned toward the automatic doors. The glass parted, harsh white light washed over them. Then they were inside. She parked in the structured lot, leaving the car at a slight angle, and jogged back to the entrance. The night air cut her lungs sharp and clean. Inside the emergency room was a wash of fluorescent light, antiseptic smells, and layered sound. A baby cried in a corner. A television in the waiting area played news on low volume, no one watching. Nurses moved quickly from one station to another, shoes squeaking faintly on polished floors. Claire found Daniel at the registration desk, standing very straight as he answered questions. Name, the nurse asked. Daniel Cole. Date of birth. He recited it, eyes on Lily. Relation to the child. Her father. Lily had her face pressed into his neck, arms wrapped tight. The nurse glanced at Claire, taking in the expensive coat, the heels, the calm posture. And you are, she asked. A friend, Claire said. I brought them. The nurse nodded and handed Daniel a clipboard. As soon as you finish this, have a seat. We will call you. She is burning up, Daniel said. She is shaking. Is there someone who can see her now? We need to process her first, the nurse said, not unkindly. I promise we will be as fast as we can. It took 8 minutes. Claire watched every second. When they finally called Lily's name, a young doctor in blue scrubs met them in a curtained exam room. He had kind eyes and ink on his wrist peeking from under his sleeve. He checked Lily's temperature, listened to her chest, asked a few questions. Viral infection, most likely, he said. Her fever is high, but her oxygen looks good. We will start fluids and some meds to bring the fever down. I would like to keep her overnight to be safe. Daniel let out a breath he had been holding so long it seemed to deflate his whole frame. Overnight, he repeated. That is fine. Whatever you need. We will get her set up in pediatrics, the doctor said. One parent can stay in the room. His gaze flicked to Claire, curious. I will stay, Daniel said quickly. Of course, the doctor replied. The nurse will bring you up. They moved again up a different elevator this time, the walls decorated with painted clouds and cartoon animals, as if color alone could blunt the edge of fear. The pediatric room was small but quiet. A narrow bed, a reclining chair, a built-in bench under the window. A monitor hummed softly at the head of the bed, wires ready. A nurse started an IV in Lily's arm with practiced hands. She winced and whimpered, but did not cry. Daniel murmured to her forehead, resting lightly against hers. You are brave, he said. You got this. His hand did not leave hers until the nurse finished taping the line. When the room finally cleared, the sounds of the ward faded to a distant murmur. The overhead light dimmed to a softer glow. Outside the window, the city lights continued their indifferent flicker. Lily lay on the bed, eyes closed, lashes clumped with sweat. Her cheeks still shone too bright, but her breathing had evened. Daniel sat in the reclining chair, as close as he could get, his fingers wrapped around Lily's small hand. He looked like he could sit that way forever. Claire stood near the window back to the wall. From here, she could see both the bed and the dark grid of streets outside. He broke the silence first. Thank you, Daniel said quietly, for the ride, for stepping in. You would have found another way, she said. Maybe, he replied, but it would have taken longer. He looked up at her eyes, shadowed with exhaustion. The harsh overhead lights had carved lines into his face she had not seen before. Why did you do it? He asked. The test. Telling people they are fired when they are not. She could have reached for corporate phrases. Adaptive stress evaluation, leadership assessment, metrics. Instead, she heard her father in her head, in that other office on that other day. Because it is the way I was taught to measure people, she said. She moved away from the window and sat on the bench, hands folded on her knees. When I was 16, my father cut off my cards, she said. No warning, just a note on the breakfast table. 1 month, no money from me, no help from anyone I knew. Survive, and we will talk about college. Fail, and you go figure it out without my name. Daniel watched her. His expression did not soften, but it did sharpen, focusing. I got a job at a coffee shop that would not normally hire someone my age, she went on, and then another job bussing tables at night. I slept in a hostel that smelled like bleach and burned toast. I counted out change for cheap bread and pretended I was not afraid. At the end of the month, he took me to dinner and told me I had passed. He said pain sifts out weakness. She lifted her shoulders in a small shrug that cost more than a larger gesture. I learned that if you want to know what someone is made of, you take away whatever they think they cannot lose. That is the only model I had. Did it work? Daniel asked. Depends on what you think the goal is, she said. I got here. She swept a hand meaning the title, the office, the tower, all of it. I know how to survive, she said. I know how to stay standing when other people fold. I know how to cut things away until only the strongest parts are left. She looked at Lily at the small hand curled in her father's fingers. I am less sure I know how to do anything else. Daniel shifted, careful not to jostle the bed. Emily used to say strength is not about standing alone, he said. It is about what you stay standing for, who you stand for. He ran his thumb lightly over the back of Lily's hand. Her fingers twitched in her sleep. When she got sick, he said, she kept making jokes about how I would have to handle things on my own. Bill's school drop-offs, all of it. She said I was a quick study. I told her I was not worried about any of that. I was worried about doing it without her. He smiled once, a small cracked thing. She told me that was the point, he said. You keep going for the people who cannot take another step with you. Claire listened. The sounds of the hospital filled the spaces between his words. Distant beeps, a cart rolling past the door, someone laughing softly down the hall. I did not have anyone like that, she said, growing up. She looked at him. The lines of strain in his face were still there, but under them lay a steadiness she had noticed in fragments on the screen and had not fully understood until now. Maybe that is why the test felt like the only thing I knew how to do, she said. He held her gaze. You do now, he said. For a second she thought she had misheard. What, she asked. You have someone to stand for now, he said, if you want to. He tipped his head toward the bed, toward the small figure breathing steadily between them, then back to her. The room seemed smaller, the air seemed thicker. She did not answer. She did not know how. Lily shifted and sighed, half waking. Daniel's attention snapped back to her at once. He murmured her name, rubbed her arm, watched her face until her features smoothed again. Claire turned her eyes to the window, to the glow of Chicago at night. Rows of lights, tiny and distant. She had spent years looking down at that grid as if it were a game board. Tonight, standing between a hospital bed and a man who had thanked her, without any expectation that she stay, the city felt like something else entirely. By dawn, the room felt washed out. Lily slept with her mouth slightly open, a plastic cup straw resting forgotten on the blanket near her hand. The monitor at her head blinked gentle numbers. Her fever had dropped. The flush in her cheeks had eased to a more natural pink. Daniel sat as he had for hours, the recliner pushed as close to the bed as it would go, his head tipped back against the rest. At some point in the night, he had closed his eyes. His hand never left Lily's. Claire sat on the bench under the window legs, crossed at the ankles, blazer folded beside her. She had not slept. The city outside had shifted from black to a gray that was almost blue. Street lights clicked off one by one, replaced by the softer wash of early sun. A nurse came in around 6, checked vitals, made a note on the chart, smiled at the scene of father and daughter. She spoke quietly. The doctor will be in soon, she said. She is looking much better. Daniel blinked awake, straightened, rubbed a hand over his face. Thank you, he said, voice rough. When the doctor returned a little later, she was brisk but kind. She responded well to fluids and fever reducers, he said. Her lungs are clear. I am comfortable sending you home with instructions and a prescription, as long as you watch her closely and bring her back if anything changes. I will, Daniel said. Lily woke enough to sip juice and answer a few simple questions. Her voice was hoarse, but her eyes were clearer. She leaned into her father like a plant reaching for a familiar sun. Discharge papers appeared. Daniel signed where the nurse pointed. Claire hovered near the door, not wanting to intrude, but unable to make herself leave before the process was complete. When they stepped out of the pediatric wing, Lily tucked into Daniel's arms again. The hospital hallway seemed too bright. I can call a cab now, he said to Claire as they reached the main entrance. You have done enough. I am driving you, she said. It is Queens, he said, then corrected himself with a small grimace. Sorry, habit. It is not exactly on your way. Nothing is on my way, she said. I make my way. Come on. In the parking structure, the concrete gleamed damp. Rain had passed while they were inside. The air smelled metallic. Daniel slid into the back seat once more, settling Lily along the cushions. She lay with her head in his lap, eyes closed, fingers clutching his sleeve. Claire backed out, pointed the car toward the highway. Morning traffic had not hit its full snarl yet. The city was in that brief, fragile hour when the night people had mostly gone home and the day people had not fully emerged. Delivery trucks rumbled along side streets. A man with a backpack jogged across against the light earbuds, oblivious. In the rearview mirror, Daniel stroked Lily's hair. His shoulders had dropped a fraction. The tightness around his mouth was still there, but lighter. She will need rest. Claire said more to break the silence than because he needed the information. Fluids. I know the drill, he said. Flu season 2 years ago was a good teacher. Lily murmured something in her sleep. He bent, listened, whispered back. When they reached his neighborhood, the building shrank. Brick walk-ups, leaning a little to one side, narrow stoops, faded awnings. Claire pulled up in front of a 3-story building with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox unit. The street was quiet. A stray grocery cart rested tipped on its side near a lamppost. This is us, Daniel said. He opened the door, carefully gathered Lily in his arms without waking her fully. She stirred, muttered, home, and looped her arms around his neck. He shifted her weight to one hip steady and practiced. Thank you, he said, again meeting Claire's eyes over the car door. I know you think you just gave a ride. It was more than that. It was a ride, she said. You would have done it for someone else. He smiled small and tired. Maybe, he said, but it was us and it was you. He nodded once, the gesture almost formal, then turned toward the entrance. The door groaned when he pushed it open. For a second, Claire saw the back of him in the dim hallway, shoulder-squared child in his arms, the two of them framed by chipped plaster and dull light. Then the door closed and they were gone. She sat in the car for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, listening to the engine tick softly as it cooled. On the sidewalk, a woman in a puffy coat stepped out of a neighboring building, balancing a laundry basket against her hip. She glanced at the sleek black sedan, then away. The divide between their worlds felt like something almost visible in the air. Claire drove back across town as the morning thickened. By the time she reached Whitmore Tower, the sidewalks around the building were busy. People in suits, people in scrubs, people in reflective vests. The city had put its workday face on. In her office, the screens were still and dark until she clicked them back to life. She could have pulled up financial reports first. Instead, she tapped the camera for Harbor and Hearth. The restaurant slept. Chairs were stacked on tables. The bar was unlit. For once, she let it be. Her inbox had grown overnight. Messages blinked from HR, from finance, from her father. She clicked through a few, replied, and clipped phrases, set others aside. Jess appeared in the doorway mid-morning with a stack of papers and a coffee. How is the little girl? She asked, surprising Claire into looking up. Stable, Claire said. They sent her home. Good, Jess said. She looked awful on the feed. Claire frowned. You saw her, she asked. Jess lifted her tablet. Security channel rotated it up when Diane called, she said. One of the guards flagging minor access anomalies. Kid in the kitchen qualifies. Claire nodded once. Keep that footage internal, she said. No clips, no jokes. Of course, Jess said. They moved on to contracts and presentations. The day filled, meetings stacked. Photos were taken for an industry magazine profile. By evening, she had almost convinced herself the hospital had been a contained event. A small story folded away. 3 days later, the story unfolded in a place she did not expect. It was a Sunday. She was in her penthouse, the city stretched out in clear winter sun, coffee in one hand, tablet in the other. Her newsfeed refreshed. The headline sat in the center of the screen, bright and bold. Billionaire Hospital Mystery, Who is the Child with Whitmore CEO? Under it, a grainy photo captured the hospital entrance at night. The light washed everything hollow. Claire stepped through the doors, coat flaring slightly, hair caught mid-movement. In her arms, a small bundle and a sweatshirt head on her shoulder. Behind her, half obscured by the doorframe, Daniel's face was turned toward them, jaw tense. She stared at the image, trying to remember the exact second it had been taken. A flash she had not registered in the chaos. A figure on the sidewalk with a phone held up at just the right angle. The caption read, New Air or New Scandal. A hollow opened under her ribs. Her phone buzzed. Then again, then again. Comments stacked beneath the article. Speculation poured in fast and wild. Who is the kid? Secret baby with a staff member. PR stunt? Done. Relationship with employee. Nothing in the text said the child was hers. The implication hung there anyway, inviting eyes and mouths to fill the gap. Her work phone lit up with an incoming call from the head of public relations. Tell me you have seen it, he said when she answered. I am looking at it now, she replied. It is everywhere, he said. Papers, blogs, social feeds. We have 3 interview requests already. They all want to know who the man and the child are. They are a server and his daughter, she said. I drove them to the hospital. I understand that, he said. The internet does not. They will not unless we tell them, and even then they might not believe it. Draft a statement, she said. Simple. I assisted an employee's family during a medical situation. There is no personal relationship beyond a professional one. The child is not mine. Direct, he said. We can work with it all. Work with that. Do it fast, she said. By noon, the statement went out through official channels. By 3, the story had twisted again. Screenshots of the article flooded social media. The comment threads ignored the quotes and pulled phrases apart. People dissected the photo as if it were a coded message. One user wrote under a zoomed-in version of Lily's face, "Those eyes, though." Another highlighted Daniel's blurred outline. "Mystery man looks nervous. Affair much." Her father's number flashed on her phone. She let it go to voicemail. That night, the emergency board meeting convened on the 70th floor. Gerald, the CFO, sat on her right. His tie was a precise navy. His expression suggested someone had tracked mud across his favorite rug. Patricia sat across, glasses pushed up on her forehead, the article printed in hard copy in front of her. Other board members lined the table, some in person, some on screens at the far end. The photo from the hospital entrance was displayed on the main monitor, blown up until the pixels showed. "We have a situation," Gerald said, stating what no one could ignore. "Our stock price dipped 3% today. Analysts are chattering about risk. The narrative is getting away from us." "It is a gossip story," Claire said. "It will burn out." "Not if the subject is the CEO of a public company," Gerald replied. "They can attach you to anything they want. They already are." Patricia tapped the paper in front of her. "Have we confirmed the man's identity?" she asked. "Internal security traced the badge access logs and camera feeds from that night," Gerald said. "The man is Daniel Coleserver at Harbor and Hearth." A pause. "There it is," someone on a screen murmured. "Employee involvement." "There is no involvement," Claire said. "He is a single father whose child had a medical emergency. I was present, that is all." "Perception does not care about facts," Gerald said. "We need distance. Now. If we terminate his employment and state clearly that he violated policy by bringing a child onto the premises, we reinforce standards and shut down part of the speculation." Claire felt her jaw lock. "You want to fire him because I drove them to a hospital," she said. "I want to protect the company," he said. "If you will not do it, the board can move to intervene." Patricia's gaze shifted between them. "There is another option," she said slowly. "We issue a stronger statement, take ownership of the story, emphasize our support for staff, and risk endorsing the idea that the CEO can blur lines with employees," another board member said. "We cannot appear indulgent." Claire looked at the image on the screen, her arms around Lily, Daniel's half-seen face in the background. In the picture, she looked almost like someone else, open, off guard. Gerald steepled his fingers. "This is not personal," he said. "It is structural. You carry the name. Everything you do reflects on the brand. You know that." He did not say what they were all thinking. Her father knew it. The market knew it. If she made a mistake big enough, the name might not be hers to carry much longer. "We can put this on the agenda for a formal vote," he continued, "but it would be better if it came from you. Voluntary separation, clean, decisive, that sends a message." In the quiet that followed, Claire heard the faint whir of the ventilation system, the far-off honk of a horn many floors below. Patricia met her eyes. "You do not have to decide this second," Patricia said, "but you need to decide soon. The longer this hangs, the more dangerous it gets." The meeting wrapped with no resolution on paper, but the pressure had a shape now. It sat on her shoulders as she left the room, followed her back into her office, stood with her at the window. The screens glowed with news clips, repeating the same photo, the same lines. She turned them off. The room went dark except for the city beyond the glass. After a long time, she picked up her phone and opened the internal directory. Daniel Cole, Harbor and Hearth. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She thought of the hospital hallway, of his relief when the doctor said nighttime observation, not crisis. Of Lily's hand gripping his shirt. Of that small, unguarded moment when he had told her she had someone to stand for now if she wanted. She pressed the button. The line rang twice. "Hello," he said. "Daniel," she said. "It is Claire Whitmore." A brief silence, like he was pulling the name into focus. "Ms. Whitmore," he said. "Is everything all right at the restaurant?" "No," she said. "We need to talk. Can you come up to my office in the morning?" He did not ask why. "All right," he said. "What time?" 9. "I will be there." When the call ended, she stood in the middle of her office, the city laid out around her, and realized her next choice would shift more than numbers on a screen. Daniel arrived at the 70th floor at 8:57. He wore the same black slacks and white shirt, but he had added a jacket, as if the extra layer might serve as armor. His tie was knotted neatly. The shadows under his eyes were deeper. Jess met him at the reception desk. "You can go in," she said. "She is expecting you." He nodded, wiped his palm on his jacket seam, and opened the door. Claire was already standing, hands on the back of her chair. The screens on the wall were blank. The folder with his name lay in the center of the desk like a small, heavy object. "Mr. Cole," she said. "Ms. Whitmore." His voice was polite, not cold, not familiar, neutral. "Please sit," she said. He did posture straight. He rested his forearms on his thighs, fingers loosely intertwined as if bracing for impact. She stayed standing, the distance between them measured more in air than in feet. "You have seen the coverage," she said. He nodded once. "Friends sent links," he said. "Some thought it was funny, most did not." She had expected humor or anger. The flatness unsettled her more. "This is not what I wanted," she said. "The article, the speculation. That part is not about what you wanted," he said. "It is about how the world reacts when it sees a woman like you near anything it can twist into a story." She let the comment pass, although it landed with accuracy. "The board met," she said. "They are concerned about the optics. They want distance between the company and the narrative." "Distance," he repeated. "They requested that your employment be terminated," she said. "Citing policy violations, the presence of your daughter on site, potential liability. I refused." It was the truth, but not the whole of it. His mouth pressed into a line. "So they are firing you instead," he said. She shook her head. "No," she said. "At least not yet. The situation is volatile. Every move is magnified. For now, I need you to take a leave of absence. Unpaid but temporary, until the story dies down." Silence stretched. He stared at her. The city outside the windows glowed harmlessly indifferent. "Unpaid," he said slowly. "Temporary." "Yes. So, you are not doing what they asked," he said. "You are doing what they want without using the word they used." "Daniel," she said, and this time his name came easier. "The board is looking for a scapegoat. If I refuse anything, they can move against both of us. If you step back for a few weeks, I can contain this, then bring you back. Your new contract can still go forward once the noise calms." "You have a contract for me," he said. She had not meant to reveal that yet. The envelope sat in her desk drawer, unsigned by anyone. "I drafted one," she said, "to promote you, to recognize what you do. I still intend to use it." His laugh was short, without humor. "You intend to promote me," he said, "by sending me home with no paycheck in the middle of a media storm with my name in it." "It is a calculated risk," she said. "If we push now, they will dig into every detail of your life, your daughter, your finances. They will not be kind. I am trying to protect you." "You are trying to protect the company," he said. "Maybe yourself." She flinched just enough for him to see it. "I am trying to keep you from being destroyed in the crossfire," she said. "Losing the only income I have is not crossfire," he said quietly. "It is being hit." She opened her mouth, closed it again. Any explanation sounded weaker in her own head than it had in the boardroom. He sat forward, hands clasping together. "You brought me up here," he said. "You said you wanted to see who your people really are when something is taken away. Now you know who I am. I showed you that, with my one job, with my only backup in the world lying in a hospital bed. I thought maybe you saw it. Maybe up there someone with all the power would stand up instead of stepping aside." His gaze did not waver. "But you are not standing up," he said. "You are stepping aside and calling it protection." "That is not fair," she said. Her voice sounded thin even to her own ears. "Life is not fair," he said. "You taught me that in your test." The room vibrated with something unsaid. "I thought you were different from the stories," he said, "from the way people talk about people at the top of these towers." He shook his head once, a small, tired gesture. "I was wrong." He stood. "I will turn in my apron," he said. "You can tell the board you did what they wanted without getting your hands too dirty." The words were not shouted. That made them cut more cleanly. "Daniel," she said again. He stopped at the door, his back to her. "You know what the worst part is," he said. "I actually started to believe you cared, about more than the numbers." He did not wait for an answer. The door latch clicked softly as it closed behind him. She remained still, the echo of his words settling into the space he had left. Her knees felt unsteady. She sat because the alternative was falling. The city outside looked exactly as it had an hour earlier. Cars moved, people crossed streets. Somewhere a siren wailed and then faded. Inside, something had shifted in a way that did not show on any chart. The next 3 days blurred. She did not go home. Jess brought a change of clothes, a bag with a toothbrush, and small bottles of shampoo. The couch in the corner of the office became a narrow, unsatisfying bed. She answered emails in the middle of the night, her replies growing shorter as her patience thinned. She ignored half a dozen calls from her father. She watched the stock price bounce and dip on the screen, a jittery line that refused to settle. Outside gossip sites recycled the same photograph, embellishing it with layers of speculation. Talk shows mentioned her name in passing. Opinion pieces debated the ethics of executive relationships with staff, even though no one involved had confirmed any relationship existed. Inside, she replayed Daniel's last sentence until it wore grooves in her thoughts. I actually started to believe you cared. Had she cared? She thought of Lily on the milk crate in the kitchen, of the heat pouring off her small body, in the alley of the way her fingers had clutched at Claire's coat for a fraction of a second. She thought of the way Daniel had watched his daughter's chest rise and fall in the hospital bed, as if that rhythm were the only metric that mattered. Jess stepped in once to remind her about a lunch she had missed, another time to mention that HR had questions about Daniel's status. Claire waved her off both times, promising answers she did not deliver. On the fourth morning, an email arrived from the board chair. Subject line, next steps. The message was short. In light of ongoing external attention, the board requires a definitive resolution. Either you proceed with termination of Daniel Cole's employment immediately, or we will convene to consider a leadership change at the executive level. Please confirm your decision by close of business today. She read it twice. The words did not change. Her father's philosophy had always been clear. Sacrifice pawns to save the king. Protect the peace with the most power. She looked at the sentence about leadership change. Either him or you. Her eyes drifted to the remote, then away. She did not need cameras to know what mattered. She thought of the coffee shop at 16, the hostel, the month of awkward, hard-earned pride. She thought of the way he had said Emily's name in the staff lounge, of the lines around his eyes when he spoke about not replacing her lightly. She got up, took her coat from the back of the chair, and walked past Jess's desk without stopping. "Do you need the car brought around?" Jess asked. "I will drive myself," Claire said. The elevator ride down felt longer this time. When the doors opened into the lobby, the air smelled faintly of rain and fresh coffee. Outside, clouds hung low over the river. The lake beyond was a flat strip of dull silver. She took the sedan from the garage again, guided it out into the late afternoon traffic, and steered not toward the restaurant, not toward her father's office downtown, but toward the smaller streets where the buildings leaned closer together. The further she drove, the more the glass and steel gave way to brick and peeling paint. Storefronts with hand-lettered signs lined the blocks. A corner store window displayed plastic toys and bags of chips. A woman pushed a stroller up a cracked sidewalk, hood up against the wind. Claire parked across from Daniel's building, the same squat structure with the crooked mailboxes. The car looked out of place on the narrow street. She sat for a moment, fingers tight on the steering wheel, watching her breath fog the windshield. Courage in her world had always meant standing in a boardroom and facing down men with more money than conscience. Getting out of the car felt harder. She opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. The wind slid under her coat. The air smelled of fried food from a nearby deli and damp concrete. Inside, the stairwell was dim paint worn thin on the handrail. Each step creaked under her heels. Third floor, apartment 3C. The numbers on the door were crooked, the C half peeled away. She raised her hand and knocked. Footsteps approached. The lock clicked. Daniel opened the door a few inches, then wider when he saw her. He wore jeans and a t-shirt, feet bare, hair still damp from a shower. His expression flattened immediately, a careful blankness. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, "this is surprising." "I need to talk to you," she said. He held her gaze for a long beat. Behind him, she caught a glimpse of a small living room, a sagging couch, colored pencils scattered on a low table, a child's drawing taped to the fridge in the corner of a tiny kitchen. He stepped back without a word, giving her room to enter. The apartment was smaller than she had imagined. The living room held a couch that had seen better years, a low table scarred with cup rings, a cheap bookshelf full of mismatched paperbacks, and a few plastic dinosaurs. The carpet was worn thin in a path between the door and the hallway. The air smelled faintly of coffee and dish soap. On the far wall, a cluster of drawings brightened the space. Crayon suns, crooked houses, stick figures labeled in shaky letters. In one, 3 figures held hands under a blue sky. Only 2 of them were named. Dad, Lily. He closed the door behind her. "Say what you came to say," he said. She did not sit. "I was wrong," she said. "About the test. About how I handled the fallout. About asking you to disappear so I could make the problem easier to solve on paper." He crossed his arms loosely, weight shifting to one hip. That is a lot of wrong, he said. More than I realized at first, she replied. Silence stretched. The fridge hummed faintly. Somewhere in the building a television leaked a laugh track through thin walls. I told myself I was protecting you, she said. From the board, from the press, from the way they would pick at your life if I refused to give them anything. Maybe that is half true. The rest is that I was afraid of losing the job I was taught to believe is the measure of my worth. Afraid of proving my father right about what happens when you care. She lifted her chin, forcing herself not to look away. You said I stepped aside and called it protection, she said. You were right. Something flickered across his face. Not forgiveness, but attention. You did not come here to repeat what I already told you, he said. No, she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope thick with paper. She set it on the coffee table between them. This is a new contract, she said. Director of Restaurant Operations. Oversight of all Whitmore dining properties in the city. Salary 5 times what you make now. Full benefits. Authority to implement the scheduling changes, staffing policies, and service standards we both know Harbor and Hearth already runs on because you are there. He stared at the envelope, then at her. I told you I did not want your guilt money, he said. This is not guilt, she said. Guilt would be a check and an apology. This is recognition. You have been holding that floor together on minimum wage. I cannot undo the last few weeks, but I can stop pretending you are disposable. He did not reach for the contract. Why now? He asked. Why after you let them push me out of the building? Because I let them scare me into thinking there was only one thing I could not lose, she said. This office, that title, my father's approval, take your pick. She exhaled slowly. They sent me an email, she said. Either fire you or prepare to be replaced. There is no version of this where they let us keep both our positions quietly. I have to choose. He took that in without blinking. You came here instead of signing my termination, he said. I came here to tell you I am done making you pay for my fear, she said. If keeping you means losing that chair upstairs, I am ready to hand them the keys. He watched her for a long moment. Why? He asked. Because I have spent my entire life surviving for myself, she said. It has not made me someone I like very much. You showed me a different way to measure strength. I am not asking you to fix me. I am saying I do not want to keep failing the one person who has proven more committed to this company's people than its leadership has. The couch creaked as he sat down as if his legs had decided for him. He picked up the envelope, slid a finger under the flap, and pulled out the contract. The legal language filled several pages. His name appeared near the top, printed cleanly. The salary line made his eyes widen for a fraction of a second. You know what this would do to my taxes? He said, the joke dry and thin. His thumb lingered on the figure. It also puts a bigger target on my back, he said. It does, she said. It also gives you leverage, a voice they cannot ignore as easily, and it puts your worth in writing not just in the way you mop up other people's mistakes. He let the pages fall closed. I do not know if I can trust you, he said. That is fair, she said. I am not asking you to, not now. I am asking you to let me start over from below zero. I can tell the board whatever you want, that you declined, that you accepted, that you negotiated better terms. But I will not lie anymore about who should be standing next to me when we say what this company is. Footsteps padded in the hallway. Both of them turned. Lily stood in the doorway, rubbing one eye with the back of her hand. Her hair stuck up on one side. She wore pajamas patterned with tiny stars. Her stuffed rabbit dangled from her other hand by one ear. Daddy, she said, voice thick with sleep. You were loud. Daniel's face softened in an instant. Sorry, Bug, he said. Go back to bed. I will tuck you in. She took a few steps into the room, then stopped when she noticed Claire. Miss Claire, she said, more awake now. Her whole expression brightened, as if someone had turned a dimmer switch up inside her. You came, she said. She crossed the remaining space in a series of quick small strides and wrapped her arms around Claire's legs with absolute trust. Claire froze for a fraction of a second. Her hands hovered in the air, unsure where to land. She looked at Daniel, almost startled. He watched them, arms folded, eyes unreadable. Carefully, she lowered her hands to Lily's back. The child was warm and solid against her. I said you were busy, Lily said into her skirt. Daddy said you have a big building, but I told him you would visit. Her certainty cracked something open in the center of Claire's chest. For once, Claire said, her voice unsteady, he was wrong about something. Lily tipped her head back. Are you sad? She asked, studying Claire's face with serious eyes. Claire realized only then that tears had slipped free. She wiped them away with the heel of her hand, not bothering to hide them. "No," she said. "I am very happy to see you." "Good," Lily said. "Because I like when you are here. You made the scary hospital not so scary." She let go and hopped back a step. "Can I show you my picture?" she asked. "Lil," Daniel said softly. "It is all right," Claire said. Lily darted to the fridge, tugged down one of the drawings and brought it over. 3 figures, stick thin but smiling, stood under a yellow sun. One held a rectangle meant to be a briefcase. Another had a scribbled ponytail. "That is me," Lily said, pointing. "That is Daddy, and that is you." I did not know how to spell Claire, so I put a C. The letters under the 3rd figure were crooked but clear enough. C. Claire swallowed. "It is beautiful," she said. Lily beamed. "I am going back to bed now," she announced. "Daddy has to read the bunny book." "I will be there in a minute," Daniel said. She brushed her rabbit against Claire's hand in an awkward farewell, then padded back down the hall. When her door closed, the apartment felt different. Not emptier, but charged. Daniel set the drawing carefully on the table, smoothing the paper. "You see why I ask the things I do," he said. "I do," she said. He looked at the contract again, then at her. "If I sign this," he said, "I am not doing it as a favor to you. I am doing it because Lily deserves more than a father who is always one shift away from disaster." "Sign it for her," Claire said. "I will worry about earning my place in that decision." The corner of his mouth twitched almost a smile. "You always talk like a press release," he said. "I am working on it," she said. He found a pen on the table, hesitated once more, then bent over the pages and wrote his name where the lines waited. His handwriting was firm, no flourish. When he slid the contract back into the envelope and handed it to her, his fingers brushed hers. The contact was brief, but it settled something. "There," he said. "I am in." "I will make it official in the morning," she said. "Good," he replied, "because I have laundry and a sick kid and no time to worry about boardroom drama today." For the first time in days, she laughed. It surprised her. "I will handle the drama," she said. "You handle Lily." He walked her to the door. "I am still angry," he said quietly. "Signing a contract does not erase that." "I would worry if it did," she said. "Take your time." She stepped back into the hallway. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The board meeting that followed was not quiet. Some of the faces around the table were tight with disapproval when she informed them that not only would Daniel not be terminated, he would be promoted. "This is unacceptable," Gerald said. "You are rewarding the center of a scandal." "I am acknowledging the work of someone whose contribution has been invisible until a grainy photo dragged him into your sight," she said. "Investors will not like this," another board member said. "Some will not," she agreed. "Others might be relieved to see we do not feed our people to the market the second a headline makes us uncomfortable." The vote was not unanimous. 2 board members resigned within the week. A handful of shareholders sold their positions. Most did not. 2 weeks later, Claire stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom facing a sea of cameras and reporters. The backdrop held the Whitmore logo. Lights shone hot on her face. Microphones bristled in front of her like a regiment of small, expectant eyes. She adjusted the pages in front of her, more for the movement than out of need. She knew what she was going to say. "Recently, an image of me entering a hospital with a young child and a man from our staff was circulated widely," she began. Speculation followed. Flashbulbs popped, pens scratched, the room breathed as one. "The truth is simple," she said. "One of our servers, Daniel Cole, had a family emergency. His daughter fell ill during his shift. I drove them to the hospital because I was there and had a car." She paused, let the words sit. "There is no secret heir," she said. "There is no affair. There is a parent who did what he had to do for his child and a company that in that moment helped him do it." A murmur ran through the crowd. "However," she continued, "the way we handled what came after exposed something I am not proud of. We were ready to treat a loyal employee as a liability rather than an asset. That is on me." She felt the weight of the admission and did not dodge it. "Effective today," she said, "Daniel Cole will serve as Director of Restaurant Operations for Whitmore Hospitality in this city. This promotion is based on his record, not on scandal. Anyone who has eaten at Harbor and Hearth in the last 2 years has already experienced the impact of his work." A reporter near the front raised a hand. "Why highlight him so publicly?" the woman asked. "Is this a calculated move to shift the narrative?" "It is a move to align the narrative with reality," Claire said. "If you want a story, here is one. A single father who never misses a school pickup, even if it means rearranging his whole day. A man who steps in quietly every time someone else drops the ball. The only thing I calculated wrong was how long it took me to see that I should stand beside him instead of above him. She let that settle. Strength is not only about holding a title, she said. It is also about admitting when you got something wrong and choosing differently. She did not look at the cameras when she said it. She looked past them to where near the back of the room, staff from Harbor and Hearth had gathered in borrowed suits and dresses. Daniel stood among them, Lily in a small borrowed cardigan at his side. She held his hand, the other wrapped around the ear of her stuffed rabbit peeking from a backpack. He met Claire's eyes across the distance. For a moment, the noise of the room faded. His expression was not reverent, not awed. It held caution, curiosity, and something that had not been there in her office when he walked out. A thin, cautious thread of belief. She finished her remarks. Questions flew. She answered what she could, skipped what she chose not to feed. When she finally stepped away from the podium, the lights seemed less harsh. Backstage in the quieter hall behind the ballroom, Daniel waited with Lily. "Nice speech," he said. "I meant it," she replied. "I could tell," he said. Lily tugged at Claire's sleeve. "Does this mean Daddy is the boss of all the restaurants now?" she asked. "He is one of the people who make sure they run the way they should," Claire said. "That sounds like a yes," Lily said firmly. Daniel laughed, the sound warmer than it had been in her office. "Come on," he said to his daughter. "We promised Marcus we would bring him a tiny celebrity." He glanced back at Claire. "We are not done talking," he said. "About all of it." "I know," she said. For the first time, the unfinished things between them felt less like a weight and more like a space that could be crossed. Spring came late that year. For weeks, Chicago hovered between gray and almost warm wind, slipping around the corners of buildings, like it could not quite make up its mind. Then one morning, the city woke up, and the trees along the river wore a thin green haze. On the roof of Whitmore Tower, dirt waited in careful squares. The construction had started in winter. At first, it had been a project line, in a budget, a set of diagrams, and cost projections. Then it became men in hard hats on the top floor, hauling planters and rolls of soil. The glass parapet around the roof stayed for safety, but inside it, a new layer of life took shape. By early May, low beds of shrubs and flowers lined the perimeter. A few small trees stood in square cutouts, their leaves just beginning to unfurl. Wooden benches sat in clusters facing the river, the lake, the skyline. A stone path wound between them. On a soft Saturday afternoon, Claire stepped out onto the roof and inhaled. The air still carried the city under it, exhaust and concrete and distant deep fryer oil, but now it held something else. Damp earth, newly turned soil, a hint of crushed leaves. Below Whitmore, employees and their families milled through the space. A group of kids chased each other along the path, shoes thudding over the stone. Someone had brought a Bluetooth speaker, and low music drifted under the hum of conversation. She watched a housekeeper from one of the hotels sit on a bench and take her shoes off, flexing her toes. Her young son climbed up beside her and leaned against her shoulder. A front desk clerk from the airport property pushed a stroller past a cluster of line cooks who looked strange in jeans and hoodies instead of whites. It felt less like a corporate event and more like a borrowed neighborhood park. She had not given a speech. There was no ribbon to cut. She had simply sent an email 2 weeks earlier. Rooftop space now open on weekends for staff and their families. No heels required. The legal team had hated the no heels part. She had kept it anyway. "Ms. Whitmore," she turned. Daniel stood near the door, to the stairwell, Lily at his side. He had traded his uniform for a navy shirt and dark jeans. There was a small smudge of something green on one knee, as if he had knelt in grass earlier that day. Lily wore a yellow dress and sneakers with light-up soles. "You found it," Claire said. Lily looked around, eyes wide. "We went all the way up," she said. "There is no more up after this. Daddy checked." "I counted the floors," Daniel said. "The elevator took a long time." She narrated every number. 67 was my favorite, Lily said. "Why?" Claire asked. "Because it sounds like a secret code," Lily said, then darted away toward a raised bed of tulips, calling over her shoulder, "Can I run?" "Stay inside the fence," Daniel called back. "I know," she said. He watched her go, then turned back to Claire. "You built a park on top of a building," he said. "I built a space for staff," she said. "When schedules bend around everyone else, sometimes people forget they are allowed to sit down." He glanced at the benches where a dishwasher from Harbor and Hearth was showing his daughter how to braid grass stems. "It is more than that," he said. She did not argue. They walked along the path together. A few employees nodded to her as they passed, some with shy smiles, some with open ones. No one avoided her gaze. No one whispered behind their hands. At the far corner, the path opened onto a stretch of clear view. The glass barrier ran waist-high here, clean and solid, but there was no ceiling, no office glass between them and the sky. The river glinted below. The lake lay beyond silver under a thin layer of cloud. The wind caught Claire's hair and tugged it loose from its clip. Daniel rested his forearms lightly on the top of the glass, looking out. "When I was a kid," he said, "I used to think the people in buildings like this watched the rest of us like TV." "Were you wrong?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes it still feels that way." He glanced at her, but not today. She stepped closer to the barrier, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I spend a long time watching people from behind glass," she said. "It made everything look neat, contained. It is louder out here." "Loud is not always bad," he said. A gust of wind blew Lily's laughter toward them. She had joined the other children chasing bubbles someone had blown from a plastic wand. The bubbles floated against the skyline, caught the light, and burst. Claire watched her dart and leap, sneakers flashing. The healthier color in Lily's face still struck her every time she saw it. At the edge of the flower bed, Lily paused, plucked a small clover, and studied it, as if making sure it was not rare before she let it go. "How is she feeling?" Claire asked. "Tired easier than before, but good," Daniel said. "She talks about the hospital like it was an adventure. I am not correcting that yet." "Let her keep the version where the story ends with a rooftop," Claire said. He looked at her hands resting lightly on the glass. He reached out, hesitated, then let his fingers brush hers. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "How many fights have you had with the board since the press conference?" he asked. "A few," she said. "Not as many as I expected. Enough to keep my vocabulary sharp." "And your father," he said. "Less shouting than you might imagine," she said. "More quiet disappointment. He thinks I'm diluting the name." "Are you?" he asked. "Sod." She looked at him, then at Lily, then at the city. "I think I am changing what it is attached to," she said. He nodded. "Good," he said. "Names outlast people. They should be worth something." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind worrying at their clothes. "You know," he said after a while, "when you told that room full of reporters that I was the reason you understood anything about strength, I almost walked out of the building." "Why?" she asked. "Because I am not a symbol," he said. "I am a man who still burns toast some mornings and forgets parent-teacher conference forms on the kitchen table. I do not want to end up on a motivational poster." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I do not think the copy department has your face pinned to a mood board," she said. He smiled too. "I stayed," he said, "because Lily squeezed my hand when you said my name. She looked at me like I was 10 feet taller. I figured I could live with the rest." "She likes stories where her dad is a hero," Claire said. "She is not wrong." He did not answer that, but his shoulders eased. "How are you?" he asked, outside of press releases and board memos. Her first impulse was to give a measured, polished answer. "Exhausted," she said instead. "Relieved some days, scared others. Less sure of everything, and somehow more certain of a few things than I have ever been." He nodded. "That sounds about right," he said. They had started seeing each other outside of work, slowly, almost accidentally. Coffee at a diner 2 blocks from the restaurant after a morning site visit, a walk along the river during a gap between meetings, dinner at a place that was not connected to Whitmore when Lily stayed with a friend's family. No declarations, no sudden leaps, just a series of small choices that kept landing them at the same table. He had drawn clear lines before they began. "I cannot date my boss," he had said. "You can date someone who happens to be your boss on paper and is doing everything she can to make sure that paper does not let her hurt you again," she had said. "That sounds like a terrible HR slogan," he had replied. They had agreed on ground rules. No talking about his performance reviews over dessert. No using his name to win board arguments without his consent. No showing up at each other's doors without calling first unless someone was in the hospital. Now on the rooftop, he reached for her hand fully. His palm was warm, calloused from years of carrying trays and polishing glasses. She laced her fingers with his. "Do you regret signing that contract?" she asked. "Ask me again after the next holiday rush," he said. "Right now, no." "Good," she said. "I do have one complaint," he said. "Only one," she said. "You did not put a coffee station up here," he said. "How are the staff supposed to survive without caffeine in the sky?" "Supply chain issues," she said. "I am told the beans are shy at high altitudes." He laughed, a low, genuine sound. She filed it away with the other small, unexpected things she had learned to treasure. Lily ran up, cheeks flushed, a flower clutched in her fist. "This is for you," she said, thrusting the bloom at Claire. It was small and a bit crushed petals slightly uneven. Claire took it carefully. Thank you, she said. It is perfect. Lily threw her arms around her waist, hugging hard. You are the best, she said into Claire's jacket. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Careful, he said. You will give her a big head. Too late, Claire said. Lily grabbed one of each of their hands. Come look, she said. You can see the train from over there. It looks like a toy. They let her pull them toward the edge again, small hand in each of theirs. The glass barrier rose in front of them, clear and solid. This time, Claire did not see a wall between her and the city. She saw a frame. Below, trains slid along their tracks like metal snakes. Cars threaded through intersections. People moved in tiny patterns that made up a living map. The wind pushed at their backs. Daniel's shoulder brushed hers. Lily swung their joined hands back and forth, with small, exuberant jerks. The sun slipped lower, turning windows across the river to squares of gold. Clouds caught the light and held it. Claire watched their reflection in the glass. A woman in a dark coat, a man in a navy shirt, a child between them holding on tight. For the first time in a long time, the height did not feel like distance. It felt like a place they had climbed to together. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.